Hello, today I'm going to give you a quick guide to using Punnett squares. And really, Punnett squares are all about probability. And if you understand how genetics works, really you don't need to use them. And eventually you should be able to do some of these in your head as well. So before we start, I want to just go through kind of some of the basics. Let's say that we have a tall dog who is heterozygous, and it's going to mate with another tall dog that is heterozygous. Okay? Now, really, each person has two different alleles. Okay? And one of those alleles is going to get passed down to their offspring. So there is a possibility that this dog, let's say this is the male dog, is going to pass down this big T. There's another possibility that it's going to pass down this T right here. So we can have a big T or a little t, and there's going to be a 50% chance of each. Same thing is true with this dog. I can either pass down this T or I can pass down this T right here. So I have another 50% chance. Okay, now each dog can only pass down one allele to its child. So with this, we call these are the gametes. So those are the sex cells, which is either the egg or the sperm. And each parent can only pass down one of these, and we can look, and like I said, this is all about probability. So with this, there is a probability that this T right here can actually combine with this T, in which case the offspring would have a big T and a big T. But there's also a chance that this T combines with the little t as well, making it big T, little t. Okay, so we can go through all the different possibilities. This T can combine with this T, making another big T and then little t. And then finally, these two can also join up, and we can have little t, little t. So what did I do? I just figured out all the possibility outcomes that these two dogs' offspring could have. Okay, and we can figure out there is 1/4 of a chance that this dog is going to have a big T, two big T's. There is, since there's two of these, it has a 50% chance of having one big T or one little t. And then finally, there's a 25% chance that it is what we would call homozygous recessive. So, like I said, it's all about probability. And I basically did the exact same thing you're going to do with Punnett squares, only now we're going to say big T, little t, and I'm going to put the gametes to the side. And then the boxes are going to show the different probabilities of fertilization. So I know that it has a 1/4 of a chance of being homozygous dominant, has a 50% chance of being heterozygous dominant, and then finally it can be homozygous recessive. Okay, now with this we can use and say that for every 3 dogs that are produced, the chances are, or for every 4 dogs that are produced, 3 of them will have a tall body, and then 1 of them is going to be short. So that's what Punnett squares help us do. They help us figure out what the probability is going to be for the offspring. So we're doing what we call monohybrid crosses right now, which we only look at one trait. So I can do the exact same thing here as I did before. If I have a tall plant, which I gave you the genotype, and a short plant, and it's going to be little t for its genotype, what percentage of their offspring will be tall, and what are the possible genotypes? Well, I need to basically go through and I can set up my Punnett square. And I'm going to have a big T and a big T, and I can do either side. I'm going to have a little t over here. So once I start with this, I start combining them and looking at the different outcomes that can take place with these boxes. You should be able to notice something very, very quickly. All of these are the exact same thing. So all of their offspring, really there's only one possible genotype, which remember genotype is like the letters, phenotype is going to be their physical characteristics. So all of these plants would be tall. So what percentage of the offspring will be tall? Well, I'll write down 100%. Okay, and what are the possible genotypes? Big T, little t, for all of them. That's the only possible genotype. I can circle it, and that's my answer. Okay, take a look at this one. If you want to pause it and try to give this one a shot before I go ahead and do it, you could do that. In humans, brown eyes is dominant over blue eyes, and a brown-eyed man marries a blue-eyed woman, and they have one child with blue eyes. What is the child's genotype, and what is the dad's genotype? This one is a little different. We really don't even need to use a Punnett square. We just need to figure out what are the genotypes of the families, or the parents. So brown eyes is dominant to blue. So that means if I have a blue-eyed person, they are for sure little b, little b. And I know that the woman is blue-eyed. So I'm going to say that mom is little b, little b. Okay? Now, since the man is brown-eyed, he can be one of two things. Either I can be a big B, or he can be a big B, little b. So those are the two possibilities for the man. Now, if I know that the child is has blue eyes, then that means his genotype must also be little b, little b. So we can go through and look. Now, if you remember, each parent can only pass down one of these alleles to its offspring. So really, mom can only pass down one of these, but it's the exact same, and it has to be a little b. Now, if we look, since the child has blue eyes, it has to get another little b from dad, which means that dad is heterozygous. So we know that dad is not this one right here, but it has to be heterozygous. So what is the child's genotype? Well, the child's genotype is going to be little b, little b. Dad's genotype is going to be big B, little b. Let's go ahead and take a look at a different type of genetics problem. This is what we call a dihybrid cross. And before we do these types of crosses, we actually need to figure out what gametes can be produced by our specimen. So in this case, we're going to look at rabbits. And let's say that a rabbit has a genotype of little g, and then big B, little b. Okay, let's try to determine the gametes produced by this rabbit. Well, you just have to think for a second. This rabbit can only produce a little g. So we know that one of them is going to be little g. But this little g can combine with two things. It can combine with a big B, or it can combine with a little b. So really, the gametes that this female rabbit can produce are just these two different types. Now let's take a look at a different one. Let's say we have a male rabbit, and the male rabbit has a genotype. It really doesn't matter what the traits are, but a big G, big B, little b. Okay, in this one it's a little more complicated, but this big G can combine with either of these two traits. So it can combine with the big B, or it can combine with the little b. So that gives me a possibility of having big G, big B, and a big G and a little b. Okay? Now, on the other hand, this little g is also a possibility, and it can combine with either this b, or it can combine with the other b. So those are all the different possibilities. This g can be a little g, big B, or a little g, little b. So those are the four different types of gametes that this male rabbit can produce. It can't produce any other combination besides these four. And these gametes will eventually get passed down to the offspring. And then the female will have gametes that it's going to pass down as well. Okay, so let's take a look at what this might look like in an actual problem. Okay, with this, let's say we have purple and round flowers. Okay, and they're heterozygous. So first of all, before we set up our Punnett square, which you can see is a little more complex this time, we have to figure out what type of gametes can be produced. And this is a little easier because these are the exact same. So if I have a big P, little p, and a big R, a little r, well, let's think about this. Okay, this P can combine with either of those, and this P can also combine with either of them. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at our combinations. First, I know that I can have a big P, big R. I can have a big P, little r, and then on the green side of things I can have a little p, which I'm going to do in cursive, and I can have a little r, and I should have done a big R first, so I'm going to change that into a big R, and then I can have a little p and a little r. Okay, so those are the 4 different types of combinations. So this is just either for the male or female plant, and now in order to set this up, well, we have to go ahead and we can write these right on the very top or to the side on our Punnett square. So in this case, I said that I could have big P, big R, big P, little r, okay, little p, big R, and then little p, little r. Okay, now if you look, the other one is set up the exact same, so they can produce the exact same gametes. So I'm going to go ahead and write those in. Whoops, that should be a P. Okay, so these are my 4 different combination types. So the Punnett square, you fill it out, it's the exact same thing, only this time the possible offspring is going to have 4 letters in here. So this is all going to be homozygous dominant. And you just go across the row, and you can continue to do this, and that's how you do a dihybrid cross with more than just one trait at the same time. Now you can do more of these, but they get a little more complex as well. But that's Punnett squares, and I hope this was helpful.